that same ability and grace and inclusivity to the office of Governor General, and we support her wholeheartedly. And we also like to say to Her Excellency that whatever we can do to assist in any way, shape, or form, please feel free to call upon us. We are here to serve at your pleasure, Madam Governor General. When I look at the speech from the throne, I come to the immediate realization that even the government has come, albeit grudgingly, as we've heard here today, and I'm sure we would hear again before we're done, to the conclusion that its performance over the past 2 years has been lackluster and uninspiring. That's the only way I could describe it. I'm not saying that the government didn't do any work at all, but I'm saying there is much, much more to be done. I think what happened was, in the first instance, in the Blueprint for Change, they, like most political parties will do when they're trying to be elected, they overpromise and they underdeliver. I subscribe to the doctrine of Rudy Giuliani, albeit he's since gone, taken away with Pat, if you listen to things. But he says that, no, I endorse his doctrine. I endorse his doctrine, which he used in his book, which encourages politicians to sell little and deliver more. But it is a trap that most of us fall into, and this government is no exception. And with that, this is the reason why we are here once more, thanking the Governor General for his second speech from the throne in as many years. To make my case, permit me to begin at the conclusion of the speech. In my printout, I think it's at page 24, because I printed it for ease of reference and reading before I got my hand on the copy that you made available here for us, Madam President, this morning. And it reads, in the conclusion, it reads, "My government understands that while we are all of us impatient for change, real change takes time. And while that change is underway, we must be mindful to ensure that those who struggle most, those amongst us whose lives depend on the rest of us being good neighbors, that we stand up and step forward and reach out in their times of need. And so my government remains grateful for the support of and the partnership with the Bahamian people, and looks forward to continuing that support to build on further progress and drive change. Now that the country is heading in the right direction, arguably, I mean, I heard somebody say paper would sit still and allow you to write anything on it. Together we can work more fervently to achieve the kind of big changes so long for by the Bahamian people. I pray the blessings of Almighty God rest upon your councils as you strive to bring about a better day, a new day in the Bahamas. In my mind, this is an admission that the government realizes it has not done enough in the time that it has been given, and time is short. And so when I hear the government's indication that we're going to try and do better, we know we haven't done enough. There's a lot more ground to be covered. I wonder what happened in the last 2 years. When I think back of the administration in which I was a part of the executive, and I realized that in 2018 to 2019, we had about 2017, 2018, 2019, we had about 2 years before we hit the catastrophic event of Dorian, and then came along 6 months later, COVID-19, the global pandemic which shut down the world. I realized that this government has not had such a challenge. Yeah, you've had the residual effect of an impact of COVID on the economy, and you speak to that in your speech from the throne. You speak to that grudgingly, I believe, because most of what I've heard from colleagues opposite relative to COVID-19 and Dorian is that we mismanaged and mishandled it, and so it wasn't impacting. It should not have impacted in the way that it did. All told, what we did, we faced a novel coronavirus, one like the kind of which the world had not seen before. We faced a catastrophic hurricane, Dorian, which decimated Grand Bahama and Abaco and destroyed their economy, and COVID came along and destroyed the economy of the Bahamas. It wasn't just the Bahamas that shut down, is the point I want to make, and I'll probably say that as we go on. You know, what you've stated is true. But these issues were not isolated to the Bahamas when you talk about COVID-19. I heard someone say assert how we destroyed the economy. Well, the world wasn't traveling. The Bahamas depends ultimately on the traveling public, the international community, to come and make money in tourism. So if the world is shut down, no planes are flying, no boats are coming, there's no tourism, there's no economy in the Bahamas. Very little economy. And so we can't see these things, Madam President, in isolation. They must be seen in totality for what they are. I mean, this government is still dealing with the effects and the impact, as stated in this document, of the COVID-19 pandemic. Did we get everything right with COVID-19? No, we didn't. Did we get everything right with Dorian? No, we didn't. But we did what we thought in the moment, in the chair, was the right thing to do, which was to move to protect lives and move to secure and safeguard livelihoods. And so we did some things that we thought were good for the Bahamian people at the time of doing it. You know, you can always Monday morning quarterback. You hear it all the time, you watch it all the time, Monday morning after the big football game. Everybody's saying, why did they decide to run the ball instead of passing it? Or why did they not pass it instead of trying to run it? I remember a Super Bowl, I can't remember which one it was exactly, but the running back on the team was doing so well all day. And they came down to a final play and decided to pass the ball, probably at the 3-yard line. And I could not understand it. But I had the luxury of Monday morning quarterbacking, as this government does. Monday morning quarterbacks, they always know the perfect play because they've seen the play that didn't work. And you know what? Yet you seek to treat the pandemic in isolation. Members of this government do. That's my submission. You can't treat it in isolation and you only use it when it's convenient for you. You got to use it for what it is. And I understand the politics of it. It's good to blame someone for something, but you're going to blame us for so long. I mean, you've been at the wheel for 2 years now. And I understand the euphoria and the groupthink. When we come to this place, we've been here before, and I always like to say this. I've been there where you are. When you come to this place and you're not listening to anyone because you feel you're doing everything right, it's a phenomenon called groupthink. A very well-known study where people you get together in a room and you start group thinking, and there's no one with a diverging point of view, or those who think differently, they shut down. You know, they shut down. And so you feel this euphoria that I'm on the right track, I'm on the right course, I'm doing what is best for everyone, but you ignore those little voices on the outside that are saying, please stop and let's readjust the course a little. And you know better, but you can't do better because you're caught up in this wave and this push. I've been there, man. I speak from experience. I speak from experience. And at the end of the day, the Bahamian people, I want to be honest in my discourse in this place. At the end of the day, the Bahamian people will determine for you what you think you've determined for them. That, you know, many tekeli fasten, you've been weighed in the balance and found wanting. So let me go to page 5 and explain what I was saying, the point I'm trying to make about the COVID-19 issue, how we use it and blow hot and cold. Some days is our fault, everything, and then when the economy gets bad, supply chain get weak, fuel get high, we start saying, oh, it's the international community that's the problem. And I quote from the subheading, Building Progress, subheading 3, Building Progress, Driving Change to Strengthen National Economic and Personal Security. And I read as follows: the achievements of my government is in alleviating the hardship of the Bahamian people and the many crises inherited have been tempered by unforeseen global factors. The Russian invasion of Ukraine has been a driver of high oil prices. The invasion and disruption from economic lockdowns during the COVID-19 pandemic caused enormous challenges in the global supply chain. While the economic chaos and hardship have hit virtually every country, and I wanted to underline this and I didn't. I used my red pen to do that. While the economic chaos and hardship have hit virtually every country on the planet, we feel the effects here in the Bahamas. Only one point I'm trying to make, as I continue, the result is that things are still far too tough for far too many people, especially the poor amongst us. So how we can come here and say how good things are, and we still have it, by your own admission in the speech from the throne, far too tough for far too many. And these factors, these global factors are no secret to us. We admit them. And so that's why we don't stand up and say to the government, you're responsible for the rate of inflation that the country now sees in the food store, at the gas tank, because no responsible opposition would do that. Because peradventure, God willing, we're going to be in the same position that you're in next time. And some of you beginning to see that now. Some of you actually beginning to believe now and to appreciate that things has changed. The tide, the ebb tide? You're a fisherman like me, you and the minister. When tide getting ready to change, there's a slackening of the tide. The tide ebbs and it flows. And there's a slackening of the tide when you're right in that moment, right at that place where the tide is about to change. The tide has always been different in Bimini. For some reason, I don't know. It seems to have a strong current always heading further north, right? And I said it as a navigator, right? But you're right in that place right now where the tide is slack on you. And you sense it. Madam President, the government sense it. And so the government, as indicated by the move of this bill, my friend, Minister Alcides, the government wanted to reset. For whatever reason, that's the government's prerogative to do. To reset its agenda and to make a second go at the promises that it gave us in 2021. And, God be with the government, because the government does well, the Bahamian people does well. But I don't see it. I'm thankful to God that you've not had a major crisis to contend with in the last 2 years that you've been in office. I'm very thankful to God for that, but because God forbid, if you are not managing the concerns of Bahamian people, that results in all these far too tougher times for far too many people, and these times of boom. God help us in a time of bust. What we could do? What will we do? I mean, you and I can go and fish and probably plant a little bit of corn, Island boys like us, we know how to manage. We can manage. Somehow put a little sweet potato in the ground, but city dwellers in these concrete jungles, they might find it a little bit difficult to do that. On the other hand, you can't relieve the hardship faced by the Bahamian people because of unforeseen global factors and then blame the previous administration for the hardships that people face. You got to make up your mind, man. Either it's the global disposition that caused there to be challenges for people all over the world, not just the Bahamas. And I make this point deliberately. The Bahamas was not the only place in the world that shut down at the advent of COVID. We took a little while longer because it took a little while longer to get to us. I think in March 2019, or 2020 is when it hit us. But by then, we had already seen the crisis taken over China in the east, and then slowly worked its way more to the west. And when I hear people talk about, Madam President, when I hear people talk about how we had to set up makeshift kiosk or beds in the parking lot of the hospital, you know, we had, by the grace of God, we had a charitable organization that came here, that Billy Graham's son runs. They also put the hospital down, and the mobile hospital down in Grand Bahama. Then the name of the organization eludes me now. But they help us to set up these emergency tents in the yard of the hospital, so that we could treat people all over the world. This was happening. I remember in Florida. In Florida, they had an old folks' home where they kept elderly people. They didn't know what to do because they couldn't let families in, and they couldn't take the bodies out. But people was just in there dying. You know, COVID was hard for every country on the planet. Had nothing to do with the government that was in power at the time. The government in power at the time had took upon itself the responsibility to do what we could to preserve lives. And how do we do that? Just like the rest of the world, Madam President, we locked down. We locked down the country to limit the spread of the virus among our people, because we knew we could not allow the hospitals to be more overrun and the clinics to be more overrun. So we had the perfect storm, right? We had the perfect storm on us at the time. The economy shut down. You have to feed the people. You have to give them stipends so that those who worked in the tourism sector, who could not get normal salary, we had to support their employers, the hotels and others who had them hired. That was the responsible thing for the government to do, we thought. And so when I hear people talk about how we run up the national debt, man, talk the whole story, man. That's all I say. Talk the full story, because government is continuous. And when we came in, we met some debt too, that we looked at and said, you know what, this wasn't necessary. But you were in the chair. It was your call. It's ours now. It's ours now. It's yours now, man. You know, my good friend who sat across the other side when I was in that other place, now the Minister of Education, she always used to say, man, fix it. I don't want to hear nothing. and I parried her in this place today, fix it. Stop, how long? Oh, fix it. You said to people, look here, I got the answer. I got the solution. Give me this job. I want this job, and I can convince you why I'll be better at this job. Then you get the job. All of a sudden you get the job, and then you sitting around lamenting over what the mother fellas do. But you know what we did. The people know what we did too. So they say, look here, next. And that's how the Bahamian people operate now. If this government lasts until 2026, next. That's how the Bahamian people operate. And that's a very sobering actualization to come to. That these are transient positions. these only temporary, man. And so you ought not get. That's what I admired most about Minister Wilson. I admired that about him. And I said it this morning, to see him about with his own bike, driving himself in a car without an aid, going to the airport, getting putting his bag on the conveyor to move through. We have to stay grounded when we come to these offices. We have to stay grounded. It didn't matter to me if I walk up as a member of Parliament. I can still enjoy the privileges of walking around the metal detector at the airports. But if someone there and they don't know me, it doesn't matter to me to take off my shoes and remove my belt. Doesn't matter. Keeps you humble, right? Keeps you humble. And so the Russian invasion of, well, you work in a ministry, you know what to do, my friend. Send all of our pictures to these airports. Cause I ain't not gonna stand and argue with anyone. If they say go around, if they say come through here or go around, you know. You know, no, I still could do that. As a senator, I still do that. I know them. But I don't. I say, that's okay, just let me go, right? I'm good. And so the invasion of Russia on the Ukraine drove up oil prices. You have no control over that. You have no control over that, right? And here's the kicker. You know, yeah, you know, it's just mad the way we live in the Bahamas. And that's why when I hear talk about a national plan, it gets me excited. But I believe there are things that we ought to be able to agree with in a national plan, and it never matters. It never matters to me which government is in power. There are some things that we have to agree on, Madam President, that no matter which government is in power, it wouldn't change. We will continue to work toward these goals. And food security is one of those things. Food security is one of those things. We start an issue under the leader of the opposition, whilst Minister of Agriculture, backyard farming initiative. And people enjoyed it. You know why? Because it gave them something to do in the COVID. In their yards, they could be isolated and grow food to eat. I think we should continue to do that, right? And we went around the country and gave people their kits where they could have. You had any, Madam President? Do you have one? Backyard farming kit, so you can grow your tomatoes and your squash, and you probably didn't need one, right? But yeah, you probably just fished and conquered stuff, right? Yeah, you probably just stuck with the protein, but we had these, and these kind of initiatives can be easily run through constituency offices for good effect. Not only does it provide some wholesome activities for Bahamian families, but it also provides much needed food when we couldn't get it, you know. And so, what we did, among many other things, and I like to spend time on this issue of COVID and what have you, because there's always this discourse. You shut down the country, you shut down the economy, you lock everybody up. No, we did, but we closed the schools. I mean, the schools were closed all over the world. Now, and we introduced, Madam President, let me focus on you, and we introduced a learning program online. Did we let everybody know? Obviously we didn't. Obviously we didn't. But we did this. This was novel for the Bahamas, that kids could go online in their homes or wherever they were, and we have to, you have to credit the good efforts, right? And go online and be in a classroom. Our teachers were giving their lessons, on these things. On these things in their classrooms. And if it weren't for COVID, I don't think our kids would be that much engaged as they are now. I mean, I know my 10-year-old granddaughter, if I get into trouble with my phone or my laptop, she comes and fixes it for Papa real quick, right? So you don't know, you just don't know what you're doing. And this is their world. But we didn't catch every student. Even in times when you have traditional schooling, you don't catch every student. That's why back in the day, when it was less of us, Madam President, you had truant officers. And so you can't blame the government for something like that, eh? Or you can, and invariably you do. But you had truant officers, if you didn't go to school, they came looking for you. Because the teacher would mark the register and say, look here, Darren's been missing for 3 days now. I don't have a 6 letter. I don't have something from him to say where he is. Go find him. He's probably fooling around on the bay, trying to get some of them dancing porgies, right? And so they go look for you. I didn't do that now. I'm just using that as an example, right? Yeah, I'm just using that as an example. And so to say it is unfair, so unfair to say you lock down the school, you lock down the country without effort or without more, just simply because you had the power to do so. And we were led by the same experts that lead you now. Save and except I don't think Dr. Dalridge. But the same very competent Bahamian doctors and scientists that led us, I mean, they're still there. Professional Bahamians. You can't account for someone who decides if a man is on the road, and boy, they beat us with this one, eh, Madam President? Fella go on the road, say he going to get some water from the pump, and somebody lock him up. And they say, look at what ministers do to the people. look what the government of the Bahamas, look what the government of the Bahamas did to the people, right? Oh, the coconut fellas. Oh man, and we use these things, you think now I'm going to say to someone, the Attorney General of the Bahamas, who's now Ryan Binder, lock up the fellow because he outside after 1 minute after 10, and the curfew ends at 10. That makes no sense to me. That makes no sense to me. And so there's a point in governance where there's left in the hands of your officials a certain discretion. All right? And how they utilize or how they operate in that discretion, you live with it or you die with it. And so that brings me now to your 3 pillars of national development. And this speech from the throne also offers a litany of litigation, another long list of litigation, and probably the Attorney General making work for himself. All kind of legislation in this thing. All kind of legislation. But I want that, right? I want laws to, and this is another thing that we got hit for. And I will not spare you, right? Make laws, Madam President, make laws for the betterment of the Bahamian people, for the lives of the Bahamian people. Not just I know this is what happens to us in government. You come and you got to catch up with OECD first. You got to run them down, and they keep moving them goalposts. So you spend the first 6 months trying to get yourself off a blacklist. In your case now, you've been on it now for a while longer, right? Trying to get yourself off, dig yourself out of this list. And so you get caught up with these external things that trouble you, and you don't have time to really focus. I won't say you don't have time, but you're so embroiled and distracted by the issues of governance and the issues of being a part of a member of the community that you got to do certain things, and you neglect to look at the things that really, I believe there are some good bills in here that will focus on how we tried to bring I don't know what happened to it, but we tried to bring the ombudsman bill. It's a good bill. The bill to help you manage. The bill to help you manage the detention center is a good bill. We need to bring Bay Street is a good bill. We need to bring, it depends on what you do with it, because we tired of just bills for bill's sake. Bring a bill. When we bring a bill, let the Bahamian people feel the results of that bill. All right? And so when you bring these bills, ensure that they impact the man on the jitney. If you read law in the UK, like you probably did and you did, they'll tell you about the man on the omnibus. And did you read? But we like to talk about the man in the jitney. We read at UB and the University of the Bahamas, right? And University of West Indies. So we talk about the jitney bus or the top. The bills got to touch them. It is pointless we getting in here and talking about, shouting to high heaven about how good we're doing and how much progress we've made. And the point was made, rightly so, by the minister. But how does it impact the life of the little fella in the group? How does it impact the life of the person in Grand Key and Abaco or Dundas Town and Murphytown? How does it improve lives that I heard my good friend Senator Roll talk about the numbers in tourism. That's well and good, man. That's good. But how long now have we been doing this tourism thing? For 50 years. And we can't find a way to legitimately enhance the lives of Bahamians from this economy. Other than the little jobs that they get here and there. No, it's not their fault. But we brag about the numbers. We always do. And we did it too. We did it too. When we hit so many million, we said, boy, we got these million. I remember my good buddy Dio. Yeah, don't bother with Dio. That's my boy. I like him, right? That's my boy. And he did a very good job as Minister of Tourism, and it's undeniable. O.B. Wilscombe did a very good job as the Minister of Tourism. We got to be big enough in politics and mature enough to recognize when people have done good in the offices that they hold, right? But bring bills, not just bringing a list of bills and list of bills and list of bills And we can't say what is the nexus to the Bahamian people as to how this will help us. You know, that doesn't make much sense to me. Missing from the bills, though, Attorney General, is an amendment to keep people in jail. People who are on bail. I know the story. I know the story, right? The police. Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do, but we have to do something about it. We just can't have the debate and leave it. Because just this week we had someone shot outside a gymnasium, right? He was on bail from 2014. So our system, I wouldn't call it your system, right? So our system is flawed. Yeah, but you know, you like to take the good, so you got to take the bad too, brother. That's how it go. That's how it go, you know. When you like the good, you get the bad too, right? So here's this is my simple consideration. I'm not talking about statistics. I'm talking about life, death, and Bahamian people who are placed in harm's way because the court, following the law and the Constitution, has to assume someone innocent until they're proven guilty. They have to. And so if it takes a constitutional amendment, which in that area is very dangerous, all right? If it takes some kind of other amendment to legislation, a bail act or anything, something has to be done. I don't care that you've been charged before a court 5 or 6 times for murder or attempted murder, and you still come back before the court and you granted bail. How in the world, which reality are we living in? Anytime you charge before a court with one murder, that's fine. You get your bail. Because we don't have a system that can get you to court in a timely fashion. We just heard here just now that this fellow was on bail in 2014, from 2014, right? On bail from 2014. 9 years, and then 2, you go back before a court for the same kind of crime. Attempted murder or killing someone. I almost say, how the hell you can get bail? And I might as well say it, how the hell you can get bail if you back before the court for 3 murders on separate occasions, and you're going to get, and the court is going, and the Bahamas is going to grant you bail, knowing that is unlikely. Well, I hear you indicating that you're putting more judges on the bench. That will help, right? But knowing it is unlikely that you get someone before a court in a timely fashion. And so there has to be some kind of amendment, something in the law to address this, because it is unsafe on the streets. Kids home studying in their homes. And these guys on the road having to shoot them up like in gun smoke. Kill a baby in the house. Right? Something has to be done about that. We can't just sit and say, okay, this is the law. This is how it is, right? So sad, so sad, so bad. This is what we come here for. We come here to fix these issues, right? We come to fix these issues, and then that brings me to the point of personal security. You know, we just saw Sandra Dane Patterson in here this morning with her group, who've been working for many years. Sorry you missed them. That's your group, right? Those are your people. Sorry you missed them, right? And you know what she indicated? Yes, and that's the point she made to me out there in the foyer. She said, we need more men like you to stand up and take ownership of this issue as well. We need more of you all men to know that this is just not a women and girls issue. And I stood firmly chided by her. I accepted her chiding, and I said, yes, ma'am. Because she's right. Because she, yeah, no, I take that back. It's our people, right? It's our people, right? It is our people. Women and girls in this country have to feel safe. There's no excuse for a fella who feels that's his child, even though that's his wife, his equal, his partner, that he could go and put his hand on her any kind of how he feels like. There's no excuse for that. There's no excuse that a grown man who should be a custodian of a child, who should be looking out for her welfare, should choose to use her in a fashion that is ungodly. Excuse, man, that can't be right, man. But, Madam President, I own a good wicket right here. Give me a couple more minutes. Give me a couple more minutes, man. I can finish. But 5 more minutes, I'll be done, right? There's no
Just want the record to reflect I'm extending you 5 minutes.
Your grace is most appreciated. Madam President. You know, and I endorse everything Duncan said, but you heard it. That's a team effort. That's a team effort, you know? So, yeah. There's too much going on, you know? The challenge for Bahamian governments now and in the years to come is how we fix these issues. And our generation, it falls to our generation to fix them. And I'm not in the business of laying blame. I'm in the business of how do we find and provide the necessary solutions that we need. You know, it's good to tell the good that we do. That is the only way that people know. And hopefully they'll re-elect you, right? But there's so much more to be done. You know, I heard the minister for Bay Street a little earlier talking about how he's going to improve Bay Street. And we really need it. I'd like to see Bay Street in a place as a place where there's only pedestrian. There's no vehicular traffic, right? Yeah, you know, so we can reroute the traffic and let them go somewhere else, you know. We have issues. The Bishop Lace Boyd, I was sitting in Senate the other night. I was sitting in Senate and the Deputy Prime Minister was there. And Bishop Boyd said, you know, you fulfill your promise of reducing VAT. That's what he said, Bishop Boyd. He said, you did that, that's a good thing. But then you go on and put it on the bread basket. And then you still can come back in a speech from the throne and say, people catching hell. Take that thing out, he said, take that off the bread basket for the poor people. You know, and you know what? People will look at you as being bigger for it, that you listened. Like we listen sometimes. People say, you know what? At least they listen to us. And because you have it on the bread basket, you have it on women items, you have it on I would say that, and plenty who think rightly like me. We got problems with crime, we got problems with immigration, we got 80% of our infrastructure, the road infrastructure in New Providence that are in a state of disrepair. Sometimes my little Mini Cooper hit them holes. I say, Lord have mercy. Do I blame the minister for it? No, I got to say the government. I remember the song when we had the road under construction one time with Ingram. The road them dig up. You know, the road them dig up. It's a big song, right? I understand that one, Lucy, Let Me Go. I understand that one was for COVID. I didn't know that. I really didn't know that. And then my wife played that. She liked that song. Like, I wouldn't let her play it in my house if I knew what that was, right? 80% of the roads in this, and people saying, you know, I'm tired of hearing about, not my president, of course. I'm tired of hearing about BPL. BPL is a problem for Bahamian people. We got to fix that. You know, more blame game. We got to fix that. People paying high electricity rates, right? Yes, Madam President, I stand guided. 120 million in consultants. How you can do that and people suffering? I can stop right now. No consistent water in the islands. Some islands, Eleuthera, Long Island water problem fixed a little bit now. No consistent water, no consistent light, right? Unkept road verges on the side of the road in the Family Islands. We gotta fix so many things. National security, I understand that you're making a few amendments there so that you could, one of them I heard the minister indicate was that you can court-martial officers, commission officers, who are very difficult to court-martial because of a certain rank. There has to be approval to court-martial them, unlike the regular Marine who will just go before the system and be tried summarily. I wanted to make these few points, Madam President, and to say to the government, like Sir Clement Maynard used to say, put on speed, man. Your time's short. Put on speed as you hold this tiller and get us to where you promised that you would put us in the 5 years that we gave you in this new day. Change this new day from a new nightmare, man. You still have time, right? You still have time to recover. And so, put on speed. I thank you, Madam President, for your time.
Thank you for your contribution, Senator the Honorable Darren Henfield. As many, the chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Tyrell Young.
Madam President, not only do we need a new table, but I think we need a new mic today. Thank you, Madam President, for allowing me this opportunity to make a brief contribution to these two bills that we have before us today. Madam President, it is indeed a privilege, and one that I do not take for granted, to stand again in this honorable chamber, and I must, at the outset, thank the Almighty God for His abundant blessings in my life. My fellow colleagues, as we start this new session, my hope is that we all focus on the way forward for the Bahamas and work together to make positive change for our Bahamian people. Madam President, during the speech from the throne, the Governor General presented the government's agenda for the 2023-2024 budget today. I am pleased to say that we are indeed moving forward in the right direction of making our Bahamas an even greater nation for our people. Madam President, these are important as they are needed to improve the quality of living for Bahamians. Now is the time for building on progress to drive change and create a Bahamas that our children and grandchildren can be proud of. Madam President, I would like to address the National Development Food Security Plan. This plan is crucial for the growth of our country. With this plan, we are able not only to feed our people, but boost our economy by exporting table eggs, locally grown crops, livestock to different countries. This government has already started the groundwork as we have many projects on stream. The Caribbean Week of Agriculture 2023, which was recently held at the Super Club Breezes and hosted by the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources, allowed the Bahamas to showcase and network with other Caribbean countries and gain knowledge on the way forward in the goal of food security for our country. We are able to showcase different agencies in the industry such as local farmers, schools, and also brought knowledge through seminars that we held. BAMSI, as it offers teaching and training in the various branches of agriculture and marine science, also took part in this event, promoting the Institute to the Caribbean heads of governments and students to get a feel of what BAMSI has to offer. BAMSI is also pleased to announce the start of the BAMSI one-to-one tree planting challenge. Madam President, I want to repeat that. BAMSI is proud to announce its program of one-to-one tree planting project. This challenge is aimed over the next few years to plant one fruit tree per every citizen of the Bahamas. Yes, it's a humongous job. It's a challenge within itself, but with corporate partners, with the government help, and with private citizen help, I'm sure over the next few years and maybe even before, we can meet the goal of one fruit tree per every citizen of the Bahamas. So this aligns with the government's agenda of food security and resilience when it comes to feeding our nation. We are excited about this program, and as we are able to partner with farmers, corporate businesses to make this project a success, it goes along with the government's agenda, like I said, to lower our carbon footprint. The 4 key takeaways from this project: tree planting, provide food, number 1, to provide food for Bahamians. 2, to lower our carbon footprint by increasing oxygen output. 3, providing shade areas in public spaces. 4, developing an awareness to all, and to all it relates to, importance of food security and climate change. So education is also a part of this project to make aware all Bahamians of what and how important this project is and where will this take us in the near future. So, Madam President, we might be at your doorstep next, or my good colleague here, Darren doorstep next, planting some trees and making sure we feed the nation for the future. Okay? So, we will be in Abaco, we will be in Long Island, we will be in Cat Island, we will be in Nassau, we will be in Andros, we will be in every single island of the Bahamas over the next coming weeks, months, and years. Okay? Cat Island is our next stop, which will be one of our first islands that we launch the project for as it relates to the family islands. We are doing some massive planning there in conjunction with the Office of the Prime Minister, of the Spouse of the Prime Minister. We are doing some breadfruit trees, trees, mango trees, cassava trees. It's just a whole platter of it's just everything native trees. So, Madam President, the Golden Yoke program, which will come on stream soon by BAIC, aims to take the Bahamas to a self-sustainable level in egg production. This project will be carried out on different islands of the Bahamas, such as Abaco, Eleuthera, Long Island, Cat Island, Exuma, Freeport, just to name a few, and will be owned and operated by who? None other than Bahamians. BAMC will also partner with BAIC on this project. This project will provide jobs for Bahamians and boost the economy. These are just some of the ways the National Development Food Security Plan will benefit all Bahamians. Madam President, the cries of the high cost in electricity bills. I know Darren would like to hear this. The cries of the high cost in electricity bills have been heard across the Bahamas, and the government has heard the cries of the Bahamian people. Let me repeat that, Madam President. The cries of the high cost of electricity bill have been heard across the Bahamas, and the government, this Davis administration, has heard the cries of the Bahamian people, and change outlined in the new energy bill that's coming forward in this bill will definitely impact the energy costs, to drive lower consumption costs, and on the back end, it will reduce the carbon footprint of the Bahamas. So, Madam President, it's not just a black and white written document just to put on the table and say, hey, we give you something just to read in your spare time for amusement. It's an actual plan, and many portions of this plan has already been put in place. And what has not been put in place is in the line being done. And moving forward, the Bahamas will continue. This is an administration of just many of our projects are already launched, many are completed, such as we talk about housing. We have built on many houses so far. One of the key factors in that housing program that I think will go a very, very long way for our Bahamians. We know that for majority of Bahamians, we don't have what commercial banks are asking for as it relates to assets to put down as collateral to obtain these mortgages of $150,000, $250,000 in order for you to get approved for a loan for a home. So this rent-to-own plan that is being rolled out in short order by the Ministry of Housing will go a very long way on when Bahamians say, I want to own a piece of the rock. This right here is futuristic thinking. This right here We have many people in the Bahamas paying rent all their lives. And at the end of the day, they leave this earth and they still do not have a piece of this rock to call their own, or pass on to their kids to try and make a better life for their kids and the family that they leave behind. So I know that this particular move will really be a game changer and a life changer for many Bahamians for the very near future. As I stated, the renewable energy legislative and regulatory framework of the expansion of the renewable energy generation will be another key factor. A new liquid natural gas bill that will provide a legislative and regulatory framework for the development of LNG generation, which will produce lower carbon emissions than the current system, along with the regulation of the bunkering and blending LNG facilities in the Bahamas, will create some benefits of the renewable energy. Number one, we'll have more stable prices in the market. Number two, less global warming, as I mentioned earlier. Improvement of public health by less emissions. Yes, this bill is important, and it is not only lowers the cost of electricity, but it is good for the environment, and it's also good for public health. Madam President, the construction of homes, as I mentioned earlier, for Bahamians is important to the government, as it is a basic right for all Bahamians to own a part of their own country. The aftermath of Hurricane Dorian left many families homeless. Darren, I know you could attest to this, and I know you have many concerns around this particular housing project. Thus, the government housing construction plan is crucial, especially in the family islands of Abaco and Grand Bahama. Plans are on the way to construct 180. It's just additional now, 180 homes. The government will also create a sustainable rent-to-own, as I mentioned earlier. This project will provide renters who may face financial challenges the opportunity of home ownership through rental. Madam President. These bills and others will impact others greatly on the way forward for the Bahamian people. I am in full support of these bills, Madam President, and I look forward to the rollout of many of these bills in the very near future. And I know that even the opposition will be proud to see and to know that this government new agenda and new focus is well needed and well accepted, and the Bahamian people will rejoice and be glad in it. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you for your presentation, Senator Tyrell Young. As many.
Madam President, the Nobel laureate Derek Walcott describes resilience and survival capacity of our people to renew, adapt, and transform despite natural and human disaster. He says, "The tribe in bondage learned to fortify itself. What seemed to be surrender was redemption. What seemed the loss of tradition was its renewal. What seemed the death of faith was its rebirth." I believe that the dislocation caused by Hurricane Dorian and the COVID-19 pandemic afforded the Bahamas an opportunity for rebirth and an opportunity to reimagine a more sustainable, safe, inclusive, and people-centric Bahamas. I am pleased that after a period of about 2 years in which the government focused on rebuilding and reopening the economy and providing a social safety net in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, we can now adjust our sails to focus on a new vision for the Bahamas, one that is future-focused and people-centric, one where every policy and every decision is transparent and made in consultation with the Bahamian people. Madam President, I rise in this honorable place, giving thanks to God for allowing me to see today. I continue to thank the Bahamian people for the tremendous support they give me. To every person I see in the street or the store, or anyone who sends messages on social media with kind words or messages of solidarity, I thank you for the support. And to every Bahamian watching or listening today, please know that I will always be guided by your mandate to me to serve all and not just the connected few. I also thank the Honorable Prime Minister, who has vested confidence in me to help manage the affairs of this honorable chamber and to help guide our country's trade policy and trade promotion as Deputy Chairman of the Bahamas. Madam President, I've recently returned from Luanda, Angola, where I was part of the Bahamas delegation that attended the 147th Assembly of the Interparliamentary Union. For those who are unfamiliar with the IPU, it's a collection of member parliaments working toward 5 strategic objectives, namely to build effective and empowered parliaments through empowering parliamentarians to operate freely, to promote inclusive and representative parliaments, to support resilient and innovative parliaments through the adoption of new technologies, to catalyze collective parliamentary action, which includes the organization of regional and global events to focus on effective policy development, and to strengthen the accountability of national parliaments. Madam President, as you are aware, in our Blueprint for Change, we committed to revitalizing Parliament, to ensuring Parliament's independence, to ensuring that Parliament is strong and effective. In the last session, we passed the Parliamentary Service Bill. This was a first major step. And in the last session, we also passed a resolution for the Bahamas to join the IPU. The 147th Assembly in Angola was the Bahamas' first attendance as a full member of the IPU. The Bahamas became the 180th country in the world to join the Union. This is a significant milestone for our nation. The delegation traveled was a balanced bipartisan group which was led by Minister Pia Glover-Roll and included myself, Senator Maxine Seymour, and Assistant House Clerk Rashad Flowers. It's interesting. I spoke to my colleague a bit earlier, and I was hoping that Senator Seymour would have been here. I think we've finally convinced an F&M that we don't go on vacation. We actually do the work of the Bahamian people. Let me tell you, we had Senator Seymour in meetings from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. doing the work of the people.
You think we can get any more that travel?
So I won't say how she flew. However, I will say that the entire delegation, including Senator Seymour, we were all actively engaged in all committees of the IPU, the General Assembly of the IPU, and the Bahamas delegation performed well. So I hope she brings that good news back to the Bahamas and back so she can tell the F&M in particular that we do the work of the Bahamian people. I was proud to see our Minister Pia Glover-Roll address the General Assembly on behalf of the Bahamas. We were warmly welcomed into the IPU family by leaders of the IPU and all global leaders. During the General Assembly, we engaged with parliamentarians from various nations, forging connections and networks that will undoubtedly contribute to our international and national agenda. I also had the privilege of addressing the full General Assembly on behalf of young parliamentarians from around the world. Madam President, I am pleased to report that the Bahamas was well represented and made a great first impression as the newest member of the IPU. However, our work is just getting started. We've joined the GRULAC group of nations representing the interests of Latin American and Caribbean nations, and we've formed key relationships with leaders and representatives from across the globe. Meaningful ties with the Bahamian delegation were met. This highlights the crucial importance of having continuity across delegations, Madam President, in our international engagement. By having consistent representation at these meetings, we ensure that the Bahamas always has a seat at the table as we build strong relationships and alliances to ensure that our needs are met on the global stage. Madam President, I look forward to our continued participation in the IPU. Now, to Bahamians who support this government, rest assured that as long as we sit in government, you have a government willing to put the swift implementation of our blueprint for change in action. We believe that when we won, the blueprint for change became our social contract with the Bahamian people. And key on that agenda is a legislative agenda to rescue the economy and to create Bahamian empowerment. Madam President, with this as a backdrop, we are here today with a renewed focus, ready to expedite our legislative and policy agenda to continue to create a better country for all Bahamians. I would like to personally thank our new Governor General, the Honorable Cynthia Mother Pratt, for her delivery of the speech from the throne. She continues to be an inspiration to me and to our nation as an exemplary leader and stateswoman who has lived her life in service of others and now continues to serve her people as our Governor General. As I stand here today, Madam President, it would be remiss of me not to formally mention the death of the Honorable Obi Wilshcombe. I know my colleagues this morning would have had an opportunity to acknowledge this great loss and commemorate Mr. Wilshcombe. I join them in formally offering my condolences to his family and to the people of West Grand Bahama and Bimini on this great loss. This nation is better today because of the contributions made by our fallen colleague. We must now honor his legacy by ensuring that our legislative priorities continue to reflect what is in the best interest of the Bahamian people. Madam President, I'd also like to offer my condolences on the passing of Dr. Perry Gomez, a veteran physician whose life's work was specializing in HIV and AIDS, helping many Bahamians who suffered from these ailments. He is a national hero who contributed as a physician and as a member of Parliament. Madam President, I would also like to offer my condolences to the family of Ambassador Alma Adams on her passing. Now, this one has struck close to home. Mrs. Adams was a personal friend and a support of mine, an advocate for me who became a friend. She offered me wise counsel, a supportive smile, and a hug at just the right moments. She, too, is a national hero. She's a patriot. She was a standard bearer for the PLP. She served as a senator in this honorable place. She was a Bahamas Consul General in Florida and the Bahamas Ambassador to Cuba. And most recently, she was the founding chancellor of the Al Ray Ramsey Institute of Foreign Affairs. She was a devoted public servant, progressive foot soldier, diplomat, teacher, and mother. She was simply great, and she will be missed. Madam President, just over 2 years ago, the new PLP administration took office facing a country that was in dire straits. We met a nation in crisis. But Madam President, oh, what a difference 2 years can make. Our debt to GDP ratio has dropped to pre-pandemic levels. Unemployment is now at its lowest level since 2008 and still dropping. Tourism numbers have now surpassed pre-pandemic levels, and we are seeing record numbers of tourists on our shores each and every day. There are those who want you to believe that not only was the COVID pandemic recovery boom inevitable, but they also have you believe that what we are experiencing now is somehow a continued extension of that post-COVID boom. Every economic success we have moving forward will somehow be attributed to global external conditions and not the hard work and innovation of our government and our business community. We know their talking point all too well. But Madam President, let's be clear. No country in this region can lay claim to the tourism success we are seeing. Maybe, Madam President, just maybe, expanding flight capacity, bringing in new investments, finishing the cruise port, refurbishing Family Island airports, and strategically promoting our nation on the world stage has a lot to do with the success that we are seeing.
Maybe.
Just maybe. World Bank data indicates that our economy grew by 14.4% last year, Madam President, which is above regional average. You don't get above average results by running on autopilot, Madam President. While the World Bank acknowledges that many countries have returned to pre-pandemic employment levels in the region, we have gone a step further. We have returned to the lowest levels since the 2008 global recession, once again going above and beyond the average. When you see us separating ourselves from the pack in this way, you must say that our policies, that our ingenuity, and that our hard work has something to do with it. And so, Madam President, with the same zeal that we've accomplished our priorities from our first legislative session, we approach the second legislative session. Unlike our predecessors, who had one long, arduous, and painful 4.5-year session of Parliament with nothing to show for it, but a collection of painful-to-watch national addresses, we intend to tick off each priority from our blueprint for change as we transform this country. Madam President, this is a government for all, not just the privileged few. It's not just about the number of opportunities we create for Bahamians either, although we're creating a lot of opportunities. But it is about the quality of those opportunities. No qualified Bahamian is interested in remaining at the entry level for their entire career. No Bahamian professional who has invested time and money into self-development and education wants to hit an impenetrable glass ceiling that sees them stuck in the middle of the corporate structure. Our people deserve pathways to unimpeded career growth based on their qualifications, experience, and performance. If you have conversations with employees at various companies, you will hear stories of the head bartender, the club manager, the housekeeping manager, posts that have been monopolized by foreign hires. Now, we're not talking about rare or unique skill sets here that you can't find in the Bahamas. There are Bahamians who currently possess these skills and are qualified for these posts, and preparation should be made for them to step into these roles. Bahamians deserve to have senior level posts in all corporations in the Bahamas. But even in the case of specialized and high skill roles, Madam President, with few exceptions, there should be Bahamians identified and trained to fill these roles too eventually. This is not up to the discretion of the employer. This is a matter of policy. And unfortunately, for many years, this has not been the case. Not only has enforcement not been prioritized, there have traditionally been no personnel assigned to even enforce our laws to see if companies are abiding by the law. So now, Madam President, that is why in this legislative session, one of our policy initiatives is launching a new Notice of Vacancy unit at the Department of Labor, which will ensure that the law is enforced. Our people rely on the government to protect them, and this unit will step in to ensure that in instances when an employer hires a non-Bahamian, a Bahamian understudy is identified and is actively being trained. Eventually, in accordance with that training plan, the Bahamian will be elevated to that role, eliminating the need for the role to be filled by a non-Bahamian. Madam President, again, let's be clear. This will be the biggest step to protect Bahamian workers since the introduction of Bahamianization policies. It was the PLP government that fought for the interest of Bahamian professionals back then, and unsurprisingly, it is the PLP government that has now stepped up to protect our people once again. Bahamianization continues to be a priority for the PLP. Madam President, we are equally focused on economic security. During this legislative session, you can expect to see a slate of bills that lays the foundation for the new Bahamian economy. The new Registrar General Bill will pave the way for a modern registrar with greater online accessibility. I know attorneys like the ones at the table, we can rest assured and feel happier and more comfortable that we are bringing our legal profession into the 21st century. The Consumer Protection Bill, which the House has debated and passed and that we will debate next week will protect the Bahamian public from misleading and dishonest business practices, allow for formal complaints to be made by consumers, and strengthen our existing laws to account for 21st century developments, such as commerce activities. The new Economic Empowerment Zone legislation will outline the incentives and concessions available in specific geographic areas in the Bahamas. This is a critical step that enterprising nations take to ensure that opportunities are mapped out and investments are made strategically. In particular, for a nation like ours that's an archipelago, we must ensure that investment flow throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And as we seek to attract investors to our shores and empower domestic entrepreneurs, we must modernize our intellectual regime. This is critical as we invest in our orange economy. And this is a key priority for the Bahamas Trade Commission as we promote Bahamian brands to the world. We must ensure that Bahamians can protect their brands here at home and ensure that foreign businesses also feel comfortable in knowing that their brands and businesses are protected in the Bahamas as well. Madam President, the Bahamas' high cost of living has placed a strain on families and businesses for decades. Unfortunately, the recent global inflation crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic has worsened an already bad situation. This administration took quick, decisive action by lowering customs duties, lowering the overall VAT rate, and ramping up price control enforcement. But this was not enough to offset historically high global inflation. And it is lower-income Bahamians who struggle the most. In a short period of time, it has become more and more difficult for them to make ends meet. And while we cannot put an end to global inflation, Madam President, we can continue to take swift and decisive action domestically where it makes sense and where it will make a difference. The Bahamas has an economy that is traditionally dependent on imports. Bahamians often say, we import everything. We import all our food, goods, equipment. Of course, we import oil. And that makes the cost of living here in the Bahamas extremely expensive. And this system is hardwired into our economic model. Changing that model, which has been around for generations, is no small task. We're not talking about a quick Band-Aid fix here. We are talking about reimagining the way our economy works. It is a necessary step that we must take if we are serious about enhancing our economic security. The Bahamas Trade Commission is working tirelessly to help Bahamian businesses diversify our imports by seeking to build direct relationships with producers and manufacturers so that we can cut out the middleman, making the Bahamian consumer experience a cost savings. Madam President, as you see, this parliamentary session is quite ambitious. We did not come into office to implement small incremental changes. The Bahamian people did not vote for us to do that. Not when the cost of living is still as high as it is, not when income inequality is as high as it is, and not when not enough Bahamians own a stake in our economy. What started off as a collection of policies and ideas has coalesced into a vision for our nation that will now manifest as a legislative agenda that will lay the foundation for change, the change we have outlined in our blueprint for change. Madam President, we have accomplished a lot in 2 short years, but we recognize that a lot is not enough. Over the next 3 years, we will continue to build on the progress we've made with full assurance that the Bahamas we will have at the end of our term will be far more prosperous, healthy, and secure compared to the Bahamas that we met in September 2021. Madam President, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And in our journey to transform this country, I'm reminded of my grandmother's saying, "Make haste while the sun is still out." That's the mantra of this government, Madam President. Make haste while the sun is still out. Madam President, we are making haste. With that, I once again thank our Governor General, the Honorable Cynthia Mother Pratt, for her most gracious speech from the throne. Our new mandate is set. May God bless our Governor General, and may God continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Barry Griffin, for your contribution, as many. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder.
Thank you, Madam President. I think I'm the final speaker for today. Good afternoon. Today I rise to thank the Governor General on her most eloquent speech from the throne. It was a speech that lays out the continued agenda and the further implementation of the mandate of this government. At this time, I want to congratulate the Governor General on her appointment. Cynthia Mother Pratt's life defines service to her nation and to her people. This service includes contributions such as nursing, education, politics, sports, and religion. As we know, the Governor General served the St. Cecilia constituency for 15 years, serving as the Minister of National Security, appointed as the Deputy Prime Minister of the Bahamas, and acted as the Prime Minister of the Bahamas. I want to thank the Governor General, and I want to wish her well. Madam President, the speech from the throne sets out the main items of the government's legislative program for the new legislative session. The speech from the throne we debate today has as its central focus on three pillars of national development: personal security, economic security, and national security. The agenda is to design legislation and policy that will enhance all three areas of security for the Bahamian people and for our country at large. Madam President, this is our obligation. It is our mandate to the Bahamian people, and we have the agenda to get it done. I think it important to note, Madam President, that the speech from the throne is a continued mandate. It's continuing the obligations that we set in October of 2021 with our first speech from the throne. One does not replace the other. The mandates in the former continue. We have accomplished much already to fulfill our promises to the Bahamian people, and we will add to that mandate with the commitments to personal security, economic security, and national security. This continued mandate finds its origin in our blueprint for change, the political mandate in which the Bahamian people chose a new day. Madam President, the promotion of personal security is to ensure that Bahamians have the individual tools that are necessary for their own personal advancement. Bahamians have to feel that they have the training, they have the development to be able to succeed in an ever-changing economy and social landscape. One element of this is to ensure Bahamians have the education and training to prepare for today's economy. Madam President, today's economy and today's country is much different than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, certainly 20 years ago. We must ensure that we are preparing our people to be able to take advantage of the new developments and policy initiatives that we as a government are putting forward. Fundamental to this are three pieces of legislation that I want to highlight as part of personal security. The first one is the National Apprenticeship Bill, Madam President. The purpose of this bill is to establish and make available programs of training of apprentices using public-private partnerships. This will build capacity and skill in the labor market by providing on-the-job training of apprentices in order to meet current and projected future employment needs of the Bahamas. The ultimate goal is to increase the employability of Bahamians and to increase the access to quality employment by improving the quality and the productivity of our workers through programs of apprenticeship. So we like to say as lawyers, it is the practice of law that makes you good. It's not law school. It's not graduation from law school. It's not reading a book, but it is a practice of law that makes you a good lawyer. Well, that extends to all areas of employment and economic opportunity. It is the practice of the trade that makes you good, that makes you prepared. This is what the apprenticeship bill is focused on, to help Bahamians, and especially young Bahamians, practice in the skill set and trade in which they want to make a career. That is what has been missing in the development of personal security for our people. Madam President, we have the National Maritime Instruction and Training Bill. We have a commitment in our blueprint for change to advance the blue economy and to leverage ocean assets to provide for greater opportunities for Bahamians. In this pursuit, we are committed to expanding the maritime sector, both domestically and internationally, in a rational and sustainable manner for the social and economic growth and development of Bahamians. The purpose of this bill will be to establish a public-private partnership with the LJM Maritime Academy to make instruction and training in maritime more accessible and more affordable for young persons and Bahamians. We will ensure that through our public-private partnership with the Academy, that the maritime policy of the country is translated into those who want to be part of the blue economy through education at the Maritime Academy. This is how you populate the blue economy and the participation of Bahamians in that blue economy through a defined legislative partnership that exists between the government of the Bahamas and the Maritime Academy. Now, you'll see from the legislation, it's almost complete and it will be here shortly, that this isn't an attempt to dictate to the Academy. We recognize the operational independence of the Maritime Academy. But we want to ensure that it has the support of the government and the policies of the government to thrive and best prepare our people to be part of the blue economy in which we are developing. Thirdly, Madam President, the third bill that is going to be, it is designed to assist and promote personal security and preparing our young people and Bahamians to participate in the social and economic environment we see, is the National Youth Commission Bill. Preparing the youth of our nation for personal security is fundamental to the growth of the country and where we want to go. This bill, Madam President, will be the first attempt to legislate the implementation of the National Youth Policy of the Bahamas, the very first attempt. We have policies all over, but we don't have an agreed legislative implementation of a national youth policy. Imagine that. We've had a draft youth policy for years. Nobody has ever finalized it, published it, and put it into force through a legislative action. We will do that. We will do that. The National Youth Commission will be tasked with empowering the youth to develop their potential for national development. Also mandated is the development of medium and long-term strategies to tackle unemployment in our youth. This is an important element of building personal security, starting at a young age. These are what I think are primary elements of the development of personal security in our country, preparing our workforce, our citizenry, our residents for being able to have opportunities for personal growth in the context of this great nation. The development of personal security, especially when we speak about the preparation of our citizens to participate in an evolving and modernizing economy, is fundamental to ensure that the policies for economic security see a meaningful impact. So you can't have economic security if you're not prepared personally to participate. So you need to have personal security in order to be able to participate and have economic security. My good colleague wanted to know, how does this all fit today? What's the rational basis for the speech from the throne and our legislative initiatives? This is it. This is it. You have to tell the story of how you're going to build your people, how you're going to bring them along to participate in the growth and the prosperity that your other policies create. Policies for economic security are focused on the promotion of growth and diversification in our economy. To promote economic security, we will have initiatives that will provide transparency and certainty in ownership of the most important asset that each and every one of us have or strive to have: property. Economic security is also largely dependent on bringing down the cost of doing business. One of the most significant costs, as we know, is electricity. We will roll out important legislative and policy reforms to bring the cost of electricity down. Initiatives to accomplish these goals of economic security in our country include the Bahamas National Development Plan bill. The last PLP administration spent a lot of time and effort, led by my colleague, the Minister of State for Investments at the time, Kalis Roll, in creating a comprehensive, bipartisan national development plan that was intended to further the economic and the social development of our country. The opposition has to support because they were part of developing it. However, the F&M administration, even though they participated in developing the National Development Plan, abandoned this effort and did nothing to advance the planning of the development of the Bahamas. We will pass legislation that will, in law, cause for the National Development Plan to be implemented so we can prevent the petty politics that was demonstrated by the former administration that held our country back. We will legislate the implementation of the National Development Plan. This will form the transparent and certainty of planning for our economic security as a country. Madam President, the cost of doing business and the cost of living is directly tied to the cost of electricity. We have set out definitive policy and legislative plans to tap our natural resources and to bring down the cost of electricity. We have already published our request for expressions of interest for solar projects in Nassau and the Islands. In Nassau, we look to launch a request for proposal process based upon of interests to establish up to 100 megawatts of solar production across Nassau in up to 10 sites to supplement the traditional power production of BPL. So let me say that again. We will issue, in fact, I have the draft request for proposal in my inbox this morning. We will issue a request for proposal for up to 100 megawatts of solar power in up to 10 sites throughout Nassau to supplement the electricity being generated currently by BPL. First ever. Madam President, this will lower the cost of electricity in Nassau, providing renewable generation from solar that results in providing at least 30% of peak load power generation in Nassau from renewables. From renewables. Hold on, my good friend. I want to make it clear. Never has the Bahamas put forward such an organized, transparent, an aggressive framework for solar energy production for Nassau. Never before. We didn't hear the other side recognize through the portal expressions of interest for 100 megawatts. Instead, they ignore it like it never didn't happen. Madam President, we have likewise issued requests for expressions of interest and will issue requests for proposals for a new power generation framework for the Family Islands. We have identified, Madam President, up to 16 sites in our Family Islands where we will be soliciting proposals for. We seek to implement a hybrid approach in the Family Islands to power generation, where the production will be a minimum of 30% solar. A minimum of 30% solar in our Family Islands. The request for proposal for this is sitting in my email box right now for review and sign off. Right now. This will bring transformational change to our Family Islands, providing a fundamental basis for developing their economic security. Delivering for you. Everything you said, we have delivered. Madam President, in support of these initiatives, we will pass renewable energy legislation to provide a framework for industrial-scale solar generation and provide necessary incentives for its development. And I might tell you, in the request for proposals, there is a premium in the scoring for 100% Bahamian participation. So Bahamians will be given a scoring preference in the responses to the request for proposals. We have Bahamians in the industry. They can participate. And they should have the preference in doing so. The third element I'd like to speak on, Madam President, when it comes to economic security, is land reform. One of the most important investments for Bahamians is property. Ownership of property in the Bahamas has been a vexing issue for many. Every one of us in here can probably cite a personal example of instances of doubt in title or ownership of land, especially those from the Family Islands, where it is even more of a vexing issue on whether the land has title or not. You name them all. Long Island, Rum Key, Eleuthera, Abaco, all the Family Islands are plagued with this, and many places in Nassau have questionable title as well. Providing certainty in ownership of property throughout our country is a fundamental element of unleashing capital to secure economic security for all. Madam President, to advance this, we will put forward two pieces of legislation to transform land ownership in our country. We will put forward a land adjudication bill. This bill will establish an adjudication body and framework to properly adjudicate property with uncertain title to definitively determine the proper ownership of the land. It's in there. There will be a unique and purposefully designed adjudication framework for land disputes only. In other words, you don't have to go to the courts for this purpose. We will set up a standalone, special-built land adjudication body that will be tasked with determining definitive title with respect to these questionable title properties. This will be a unique and purposefully designed adjudication framework for land disputes. The goal is to be able to expeditiously determine the rightful ownership of property and to unlock the economic security that comes from legal property ownership. We will also put forward, Madam President, a registered land bill. Frequently, property transactions and ownership are complicated by the way we verify title in the Bahamas. primarily as a result of not having a land registry system. We all know when you buy property, your lawyer got to go back 30 years in title, got to verify every step along the way. Well, what happened if somebody died in the middle and didn't properly probate that title? Then you have a cloud. Now you got to fix the cloud. You have to reopen the probate in order to process that little gap that exists from a document point of view. You know the struggles. Sometimes it takes years to go through this process to clear what you would otherwise think was good title because of a failure in the system of those 30 years. This will all be cured with the establishment of a land registrar and registry system, where land registry will be duly filed and more easily tracked and verified along the way, making property transactions easier, quicker, and cheaper. My conveyancing colleagues may have a problem with this, but this is the right thing to do for Bahamians and land ownership. The methodology of property transactions in this country is about to change for the better, unleashing further economic security in the context of land ownership. Madam President, I'm not just speaking aspirationally here. Both pieces of legislation are substantially completely drafted. Both pieces of legislation have been vetted by a Central Committee on Property appointed by the Prime Minister that has membership of esteemed property practitioners in the country. And both pieces of legislation will be ready for public consultation by the end of this month. With a goal to passing the legislation before the end of the fiscal year. So starting in the next fiscal year, which would be July 2024, we will have a budget allocation to establish the land adjudication body and start building the land registry in our country. This is a fast-paced, immediate process to unleash economic security and financial autonomy for scores of Bahamians across our archipelago. And the good senator wanted to know how does this all fit together? This is how it fits together. Madam President, if there is a breakdown in national security, personal security and economic security are put in jeopardy. We will therefore advance a legislative compendium to bring a comprehensive approach to crime prevention and protecting our borders. I would like to highlight certain parts of this compendium which are particularly important. We will put forward, Madam President, anti-gang legislation. We acknowledge that there are provisions in our penal code currently that speak to criminal instances of gang involvement. We are of the belief, especially with the current level of violence in our society, that standalone anti-gang legislation is required to provide for stiffer penalties and prison terms for members of and acts of criminal institutions and organizations. Of note, we want to provide for criminal sanctions for criminal organizations, which would include gang organizations. So we're taking it one step further. Not just criminal consequences to membership in a gang, but to treat the gang as a criminal organization that by and of itself will have separate criminal consequences in law. RICO. We think this is an important to curb the violence in our society and to ensure national security for our nation. Madam President, we will put forward cybercrime legislation. We have witnessed the proliferation of technology and the use of social media and other technology-based platforms in the Bahamas. Unfortunately, Madam President, with this proliferation, we have also witnessed the misuses of these technology-based platforms, including mischaracterizations, including fraud, cyberbullying. These are all examples of criminal consequences of a rapidly evolving technological society in which we live. The use of technology for nefarious purposes is increasing day by day in our society. In order to be a jurisdiction attractive to financial technology businesses, Madam President, we also have to have a proper framework to protect against cybercrime activities. We are reviewing the various international conventions on the issue, including the Developing Convention at the United Nations, and will pass international best practices legislation on the prevention of cybercrime. We must provide for national security in technology and misuses the rapid advancement of technology in our country. We must ensure that our criminal laws are keeping pace with what's happening in our society from a technological point of view to ensure that we have the national security that is going to be required to advance the nation. Madam President, before I close, I think it appropriate to highlight policy and legislative initiatives that fall directly within the responsibilities of the Office of the Attorney General and its related offices. The Registrar General, Madam President, we all know the vexing issues that have existed for many a year tied to the Registrar General's office, whether that be on the company side or whether that be on the civil side, with births, deaths, marriages, deeds, and documents. A new Registrar General bill to reorganize the operations of the Registrar General to ease the burden of doing business while providing timely customer service to members of the Bahamian society is being drafted. We will, in law, separate the company registry from the civil registry and run them autonomously to ensure proper service and expertise is delivered in each. We will launch a new online company registry portal, which will contribute to the ease of doing business and lower the cost of doing business in the Bahamas. We will launch a new online civil platform to provide expedient and transparent services to Bahamians. Madam President, gone will be the days of having to camp out in front of the Registrar General's office in the weather and the elements just to register a birth. Not only will we do that, Madam President, gone will be the days of having to actually come to the Registrar General to register a birth, because we are going to put in each major hospital a birth registry so you can register the birth at the same time the child is born in the hospital. That will upload into the digital system. So you'll be able to print off a certified copy of the birth certificate when you get home from your computer. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. It's revolutionary. It seems simple, but if you have ever participated in this civil registry process, you know the nightmare that exists. This will be fixed under my watch. Madam President, intellectual property. In our blueprint for change, we promise that as a key component of our economy and therefore economic security, We will create a new economic model for culture and the creative industry in the Bahamas, otherwise known as the Orange Economy. In support of this, we promise to incentivize creatives to obtain intellectual property for their creations. However, if anybody has ever worked with the current intellectual property laws of the Bahamas, and as anybody has ever tried to register something as simple as a trademark in the Bahamas, we know the challenges that exist in an antiquated system. In support of this, we will do what is necessary to provide a framework for the orange economy of the Bahamas and those in it to have personal and economic security to thrive. We will put forward, Madam President, a full compendium of intellectual property legislation, which includes bills and regulations that will be introduced to protect the country's creative industries and our orange economy. That will be done, Madam President, quickly. The compendium will be ready to go for consultation by the end of this calendar year, Madam President. And we will table it in the upcoming calendar year and hopefully quickly pass the legislation. We are engaged with the World Intellectual Property Organization, otherwise known as WIPO. They are providing technical assistance. We will sign on to appropriate international treaties so our intellectual property rights are respected and honored throughout the world, providing global economic exposure and security for our creatives in the Bahamas. In support of this compendium of intellectual property legislation, that will be introduced to protect the creatives. We will also invest in an intellectual property registry to ensure the efficiency and ease of use digitally of intellectual property, trademarks, copyrights, and other types of intellectual property protections for our creatives. For those lawyers in the room and listening, we will have a new legal profession bill. The legislation will establish a modern approach to oversight of the legal profession. The bill governing lawyers today needs updating in the worst of ways. Key areas of focus will include requirements for continuing education and the ability to obtain specialty practice certificates so attorneys can hold themselves out as experts in certain practice areas. So I'll give an example. I have a specialty certificate in tax law granted by the Florida Bar Association. I took specialty classes, I took a state test and passed, and now I could hold myself out as a bar-certified tax attorney, a qualified specialist. But we will have that framework in the Bahamas, so when you want to go to an IP lawyer as a creative, and you want to know that that lawyer knows actually what they're doing, they can hold out as a specialist in intellectual property because I have been trained in that. I do continuing education in that area, and you can have confidence I will get it right. Gone are the days are generalists, practitioners who hold themselves out to be experts in particular areas with necessary training to do so. Madam President, the Bar is in support of this. The Bar Council is in full, unanimous support of this. Lawyers across the world have continuing education obligations, as do other professionals, such as accountants, doctors. There is utility in keeping abreast of changing areas of the law, and we feel it appropriate to have the Bahamian Bar do so as well. Madam President, we will put forth a judicial compendium. As part of our focus on national security, we propose a few judicial reforms. We will pass a new court services bill that will empower the judiciary to operate autonomously by taking oversight by central government, thereby removing the bottleneck caused by the current system and further judicial independence. This will create greater efficiencies in operations of the courts. As mentioned by my colleague, we will also amend the Supreme Court Act to expand the number of Supreme Court justices by 5, to expedite and clear the backlog of cases. Now, 5 is equal to 20% of the current complement, so we will 25% of the current complement. So we will be increasing the complement by 25%. This is important for the administration of justice and to promote timely adjudication of disputes, both criminal and civil. So, Madam President, before I wrap up, I again want to thank the Governor General for her most eloquent speech from the throne. As you can see, our government has a lot to do. We are hard at work, and the Bahamian people will be lifted up by our enhanced New Day agenda. We have a good team, led by a great leader. I want to thank the Prime Minister for his leadership, for his direction, for his humbleness, and for his desire to make our country a better place to live for everybody, not just you. I look forward to our positive stamp on the legacy of this greatest little country in the world. I thank you, Madam President. I thank my colleagues. And I support this resolution.
Good work.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder, for your contribution. As many? It has been moved and seconded that the following resolution be agreed. Resolved that a humble address be presented to Her Excellency the Governor General, thanking her for her most gracious speech at the opening of Parliament. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The resolution is agreed. Further resolutions?
There are none, Madam President.
Discharge of select committees. Notices of future meetings.
Madam President, thank you. Madam President, I give notice that at a future meeting of the Senate, we would wish to move the following resolution. Whereas the Treasurer of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, a corporation sole established and existing under and by virtue of Section 4(1) of the Ministry of Finance Act, Chapter 22 of the Statute Law of the Bahamas, hereinafter called the Treasurer, is seized in fee simple in trust for His Majesty, the right of his government of the said Commonwealth for public purposes of the property described in the schedule hereto, hereinafter called the hereditaments. And whereas the Treasurer has agreed to sell an Abaco Medi Center Limited, a company incorporated under the laws of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and a walk-in clinic and urgent care facility that provides essential medical services to the community on the island of Abaco, has agreed to buy the said hereditaments for a like estate in fee simple for the sum of $120,000 in the currency of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, hereinafter said the said currency. And whereas by Section 5(3)(a) of the Ministry of Finance Act, Chapter 23, Statute Law of the Bahamas 2000, the Treasurer shall not sell, make any other disposition of the fee simple of any land vested in him without the prior approval of both Houses of Parliament, signified by a resolution thereof. Therefore, be it resolved that pursuant to Section 5(3)(a) of the said Ministry of Finance Act, Chapter 23, in consideration of the said sum of $120,000 in the said currency, this House approves the conveyance by the Treasurer, Abaco Medi Center Limited, of the said hereditaments.
Order the document be brought up. Order the document do lie on the table. Orders for clerk. Adjournment.
Madam President, I move that at its rising, the Senate do adjourn until Wednesday, 8th November 2023.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the Senate, at its rising, do adjourn to Wednesday, the 8th of November, 2023. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Final adjournment.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, just before I move to adjournment, I just want to join colleagues in expressing condolences to the families of late former Minister Perry Gomez, and as well to the late former Senator, former Ambassador, former Consul General Alma Adams. As we were doing tribute to our fallen Minister Obi Welshcombe, I thought we should do his resolution separately, and just I know that senators in their contributions were able to make mention, but I just want to, on behalf of the government side at this time, extend condolences to the family of the late Perry Gomez and Alma Adams, and we will have an opportunity to speak more fully in their memory at a future sitting. Madam President, I move, having said that, I move that the Senate do now adjourn.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded that the Senate do now adjourn. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed. The Senate stands adjourned to the 8th of November, 2023.